Bryce Young said this to ESPN on Xavier Legette, his first-round wide receiver. This is Bryce Young's quote. That combination of size, speed, how explosive he is, the way he comes out of routes, it's definitely something that I got to get used to. We're working on getting that timing down, but I'm super excited. They have to get used to each other. Bryce Young played with the wide receivers at Alabama. Bryce Young last year played with, I don't know if they're full-blown NFL wide receivers, but guys that were getting paid a lot of money to play wide receiver in the NFL last year.
And he really pretty much just threw to Adam Thielen.
But
majority of the season.
Chark at one point in time was pretty fast. Mingo is a second-round pick. And he is still saying that Xavier Legette is different. Now, I will say, I've heard this said about a few other wide receivers. That is, like the straightaway speed, yes. But sometimes it's their athletic ability to turn, to break, to cut without slowing down. That is some of the more difficult things to adjust to. I've heard this about Tyreek Hill. I've heard Tyreek Hill, you like every quarterback when you're getting ready to throw with Tyreek Hill, what do? You warm up a little extra because you're thinking like, if we run a deep ball, I'm putting it out there, right? Because it becomes like a pride thing. He's not going to outrun my arm, right? You throw it early, you throw it far, you let him run underneath it. Your pride stays intact. But I've heard the thing with Tyreek Hill that's the hardest to get used to is he can almost run full speed and cut like 90 degrees without slowing down. So it's when you're trying to time it out of breaks that you're way behind him. And that just takes getting used to, right? You just have to train your brain to think about him differently than every other wide receiver. Bryce Young is hinting that while probably not Tyreek Hill level, Xavier Legette has some of that, right? It's when I talk about the way our brain is wired a lot in sports, and it's wired by every experience you've had, right? And what I mean by that is somebody Xavier Legette's size, when you're a quarterback, just somewhere in your brain, deep inside your subconscious, it tells you, all right, let's not put it way out in front of him, right? Let's not put this throw on off the break way out in front of him because guys that big can't move that fast. And the reason why your brain tells you that is because you've been throwing to wide receivers and tight ends your entire life, and every single one of them that's been that big, that size, that shape in your peripheral vision hasn't been able to move that fast. So now Bryce is having to reprogram his brain, rewire his brain a little bit. This is why I was concerned with Xavier Legette not playing at a mandatory minicamp because of the hamstring injury. I understood the logic, right? It's June, right? Games aren't played until the fall. Relax. You have like a month until everyone has to return for even training camp. So chill. And I'm sitting there going, well, it's not like you're already a finished product, right? You don't need shoulder pads and helmets and leg pads and full everything contact for Bryce Young to get to know that Xavier Legette's different in and out of breaks.
Yeah, it feels like with Bryce Young and Xavier Legette, when you just look at his size and how tall he is, Bryce is going to have to get comfortable with one, stepping back far enough in the pocket where he can arch the football up a little bit and draw Xavier Legette and a defender to maybe a 50-50 ball where he's forcing Legette to jump up and beat a back or somebody in the secondary to secure a catch.
It's I'm trying to think of, like, if you had let me think of a good wide receiver example here. If you had a Tank Dell,
okay,
who's, I don't know, 5'10", 165 pounds. If you had Tank Dell, you would be anticipating throwing it to him like he's quick as a cat because he's smaller, lower to the ground, right? Has that control. Looks like he's moving quick. If you had Calvin Johnson, right? I'm just talking like body types here, right? 6'5", 235. You're probably comfortable throwing him a deep ball like he's a track star, but if he has to run a dig, you're probably going to give him a few extra beats, just a few extra snaps of your fingers to get in and out of his break because he's got to slow down 235 pounds moving at 4.240 fast. That's the difference here. So now Xavier Legette is whatever he is, 6'1", 230, 6'2", 230, whatever he is. Everything in your brain tells you to give that extra beat, that extra second for him to get in and out of breaks, and he's just not doing it. He's getting out faster, or at least that's kind of what's being hinted here by Bryce Young to ESPN. That's how far away their chemistry is from being ready to roll, right? It's not the nuances. It's not down to the itty-bitty little tiny things that you talk about on a game week. Hey, if the corner plays you this way, I want you to stem it out a little bit, meaning just lean a little bit away from your break, snap it off. They're not there yet. They're like, hey, let's run these routes on air and make sure I know how good you are. And the same is true the other way. Obviously, this isn't a quote from Xavier Legette, but every quarterback's a little different, right? Every quarterback, the ball comes out a little bit different trajectory. The spiral may be a little bit different, whatever it is. And it's not like Legette's coming from, a scrub, right?
Spencer Rattler is pretty good. Had some great games at South Carolina.
And Spencer Rattler in routes on air is an all-world guy, right? You put him in shorts and a T-shirt, Spencer Rattler can sling it with the best of them. So there's a getting used to period from what Rattler was doing with some of his improv stuff, and Bryce Young, which is so like I'm just going to get it to where it's got to go on the money, on the nose. Like it's a different game. There's getting used to each other that has to happen with the Panthers. And that's not a problem as long as you can do it by week 1 or do it by week 4 or do it by whenever Xavier Legette's going to be leaned on. Because I know Bryce Young knows Adam Thielen. They've got the reps in. They threw about 150 balls to each other last year. I almost said yesterday. Maybe they did yesterday. I don't know where they've been.